Greetings and welcome to the first session of Kidney Action Week 2023. We're thrilled that you joined us this afternoon. You're tuned in to our session titled, I was just diagnosed with kidney disease. What are my next steps? A kidney disease diagnosis may come as a shock, as well as with a mix of emotions. Over the next hour, our speakers will share their personal journeys with kidney disease and the steps they took after receiving their diagnosis. We will also have an opportunity to ask our speakers questions towards the end of the session. I'm Dr. Ken Sutha, a pediatric nephrologist in Northern California. In addition to taking care of kids with different kinds of kidney disease, I myself also have kidney disease, being first diagnosed almost 30 years ago now. And since then, I've been on dialysis and have had 2 kidney transplants. I'll be moderating today's discussion and dialogue, and now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. First, we were expecting to have an outstanding kidney education advocate, Melissa Baker, with us, but unfortunately an emergency came up and so she was unable to join us. But it's my pleasure to introduce Della Major. Della is the founder and CEO of LYVE, Living Your Life Victorious and Empowered. As an end-stage renal disease patient since November 2010, Della is intimately aware of the challenges faced by those who live with chronic illnesses. Della is the certified kidney health coach for the American Kidney Fund, a member of the Patient Advocacy Advisory Council, Network 10, a subject matter expert for the National Coordinating Center, Patient and Family Engagement, Learning and Action Network, a member of the Medical Review Board for Network 10, and a Patient Advisory Council member for the National Kidney Foundation of Illinois. Della's advocacy work within the renal community has been highlighted on several national platforms, including WBBM, 2 News, ABC 7 News, and the National Kidney Foundation of Illinois' The Journey podcast. Della is also the author most recently of From Trigger to Transformed, a journey to self-discovery and purpose. We hope this session leaves you feeling empowered as well. We'll have a Q&A segment at the end of the session. You're more than welcome to type your questions and comments in the window next to or below the Facebook Live video, or in the chat box to the right if you are here with us on the Kidney Action Week website. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. All right, now let's get started. To begin the session, let me give you a brief overview of kidney disease, and we'll show you a little slide. So, of course, the kidneys are an extremely important and vital organ, and their proper function is critical to the function of all the other organs in the body. They filter the blood, the volume of the blood several times throughout the day, and in order to regulate the balance of different salts and the fluid within the body, and ultimately this removes about half a gallon of extra fluid and waste products. The kidneys also have several other functions and important jobs, such as controlling blood pressure, making red blood cells, and keeping your bones healthy. On the next slide, we'll see that what happens when the kidneys get damaged. What happens is that your kidneys don't know, if your kidneys do not work as they should, all that extra fluid and waste products can accumulate in the blood, and instead of leaving your body in the urine. And this can cause fluid and other toxins to build up in your body, which can affect the function of other organs within your body. There can be many different things that cause kidney damage, including chronic kidney disease, and this can be caused from a variety of different things. Sometimes genetic causes, sometimes the cause is unknown. There are many different kinds of symptoms that are associated with kidney disease. Unfortunately, for most of the time, the symptoms are kidney disease is largely asymptomatic. That is, people with kidney disease don't even know or have any feeling that they have kidney disease. And it's only until the later stages of kidney disease that those symptoms start to manifest. Some of those symptoms can include swelling of the body due to accumulation of fluid, frothy or foamy urine, blood that can be in the urine that might be visible to the eye or sometimes only visible by a microscope, fatigue and tiredness, decreased appetite and vomiting, and uncontrolled blood pressure or high blood pressure. So how might you know whether or not you have kidney disease? How can this be diagnosed? On our next slide, there are different tests that we can do, including looking at your urine under a microscope to see if there are any abnormal signs of things that shouldn't be there, different kinds of blood tests, including checking things called urea or creatinine, which are different kinds of waste product that can accumulate in the blood, and sometimes different kinds of imaging tests like ultrasound that can tell if there are any structural or blockages in the kidney. All right. Now we'll get on to onto our questions. First, Della, so glad that you're able to join us here today. Sad that we don't have Melissa with us here, but we'll just make this a dialogue between the two of us. We're so glad that you're able to share your story. I talked a little bit about your journey in the biography, but can you tell us a little bit more about your history with kidney disease and your journey?
Well, I've been dealing with kidney disease now for close to 18 years. How I actually launched into this, and I say launched because I was teaching a class and I was a director for an after school program. And I was in the midst of a teaching session and I fell out right in front of my students. And it was a little bit scary for them, a little bit scary for me. But, you know, I dealt with a lot of fatigue. I dealt with a lot of, you know, basic symptoms that I didn't know. And I just treated it as if I was just overworked because I was being a very busy person. It happened to be the next day I was barely able to walk and function. And I had a best friend who also was an educator who I called, and she was able to get me to the hospital, or basically the clinic. And from there, my blood pressure was at stroke level. It was 220 over 120. It was to the point they had to rush me to the emergency room. And from there, everything began to shut down. It was not until the next day is when I learned that I had something called lupus nephritis. And in the medical word, they say SLE, systemic lupus nephritis. And it was because of the lupus. And I found out that it was an autoimmune disease and it was attacking my kidney as well as my heart area. And but the most damage was the kidney, and they did a kidney biopsy. And of course, we found out that my kidneys was failing. From that journey, and that was in 2007, I sort of kind of crashed into dialysis and been dealing with that, this disease a little bit longer, for over 10 years before in 2019, I'm very fortunate to finally qualify and to be able to receive a kidney transplant. But I am going through phases currently right now, rejection because of the lupus. And so my journey again of dealing with, you know, CKD is about to start back over in relations to possibly dialysis and that. So this journey has been definitely one that's been eye-opening in relations to both in-center home dialysis and transplantation, now dealing with the mental capacity of, you know, starting this journey all over again. So this is definitely one of those journeys that I'm very passionate about, of sharing and making sure that people truly is aware of their status and their situation. So that's a little bit snippet of my journey.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your story, Della. I can imagine all those different parts of your experience have been an emotional experience. Going back to your initial diagnosis, after you ended up in the hospital with those high blood pressures, and you were told that you had lupus. Do you recall some of the first things that you did after receiving that diagnosis?
Well, mentally speaking, you know, I had to just understand exactly what is lupus, because the doctor was, you know, talking to me on a medical term. But when you are just a common person, a lay person, you know, terminology is everything. So for me, it was a matter of my mindset of just trying to wrap my head around everything. So I heard two things. I heard lupus, I heard dialysis, And then I heard I had end stage renal disease. And so when you hear the word die or when you hear the word end, mindset goes to, oh, I'm about to die. And so
Hmm.
that journey, the mental journey was more intense than it was the physical journey, because at that time, all I can do is, because they told me I was at stage 4. And so I went through this series of cytoxin. I had to do 6 months of chemotherapy just to even slow the lupus down, because it was so aggressive, in the sense of that, like I said, it not only affected my kidneys, but my heart. And so I had, cardiac type of issues. And so that just trying to grasp to the point where I'm breathing, grasp to the point that, my heart is not being strained, the blood pressure, trying to get that under control. It was a lot of things, but my mindset was the one most affected. So I had to come to some realization as, I need to get a control of this, because I was doing this journey by myself, because at the time when
Hmm.
I had all this, I lost my mom, lost my husband, lost a
Hmm.
lot of things. So, it's just a matter of me just trying to balance out things and then trying to figure out where I'm going to go next, how I'm going to start this journey. So it was really challenging in that step. So those steps was the first thing, is trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. Then from there, that's when I was able to try to get an understanding about what I was dealing with, and then try to find the best recourse to create my best normal.
Yeah, I imagine there is such a steep learning curve with all this new information about not only lupus, but all the things that come with kidney disease. Looking
Yeah.
back now that you've been through all of this, is there anything about kidney disease you wish that you knew back then when you were first starting out?
You know, one of the things about when you go to your primary care physician, just for your overall basic health care, they run labs, they run tests. And I often wondered if I was able to really have quality medical health care, because at that time I was going through the county system. If my doctors at that particular time, when they saw certain levels that was not right, if they could have given me some warnings or some early detections of some things. And that's something I've often, even in my advocacy, talk about, is coordination of care, making sure that everybody talks to everyone in relations to
Mm.
my health. And so for me to crash, a lot of the symptoms that we talked about, I had all of that. But, one of the things that I did realize is, when you dealing with certain medical situations, and when you're not able to, balance out good healthcare or quality healthcare, when that disparity come into play, you can oftentimes get missed. And wish I would have had just some understandings about what is, when you have these signals, or with some of these basic things, this is something to, take a look into. And so, a lot of things could have, to me, could have been preventative, or maybe I could have slow this process down if I would have been able to have quality health care a little bit. And so I really advocate strong for communities where that is really important, because education is everything. And I'm quite sure, I consider myself to be a well-educated person. So if I would have known just some certain basics, as far as within my healthcare, even if I didn't have like the standard healthcare like most people would have, that I could have had, maybe did some preventative measures. And I think that would have been opportunities for that. And so that's very, very key in relations to your healthcare, is being able to talk to your team, talk to your doctors. So there's a
Mm.
lot of things that I think is important.
Yes, definitely. That's so important. The In order to be able to do that prevention, having already established a relationship with your primary care doctor, so you can get tested, or so they can establish a baseline, so that they know to look out for the early signs of the disease that might be creeping in, or even do screening for the underlying
Yes,
conditions that can contribute to kidney disease, like
yes,
diabetes or high blood pressure.
as that?
we have the great fortune of knowing each other in person, and so I think you've heard a little bit about my story. But for the people in our audience, I was first diagnosed when I was about 10 years old. They found that there was abnormal protein in my urine. There's not supposed to be protein in the urine. That can sometimes happen with a it's not that uncommon childhood kidney disease called nephrotic syndrome. That kind of disease usually responds very well to treatment with steroids, but unfortunately, I didn't respond to those treatments, and so they did a biopsy similar to what Della underwent, and that showed that I had something called FSGS, focal segmental glomerular sclerosis. That's basically a complicated way of saying that there was scarring of my kidney. There can actually be many different reasons why that scarring can happen. And we're still, the field of kidney medicine is still trying to come up with ways of understanding how best to treat it. So my doctors were able to put me on some medications that helped to slow the progression of my kidney disease by reducing the amount of protein that was in my urine, but not completely stop it or reverse the underlying cause of the kidney disease. So by the time I was graduating from college, I knew I'd need a transplant or to go on dialysis to survive. Fortunately, my dad was a match, and so in my second year of medical school, he was able to donate his kidney to me, and I was able to go back to school and do all kinds of things I never imagined that I could do before my transplant. But as we heard from Della, the experience of kidney disease and having a kidney transplant is it's a treatment but not a cure, and it continues to be a roller coaster, and that was the case for me. I had issues with infections, and then because they had to reduce my medications to allow me to fight off my infections, that opened the door to rejection. And so ultimately, I had to go on dialysis about a decade after my first transplant. Thankfully, I received a second transplant now in 2018, and I've been doing well since then. But as we heard from Della, it requires constant vigilance of keeping in touch with my doctors and taking my medications and being aware about all the different things regarding my health. Again, thank you everyone for being here for this discussion. We're just at the beginning of it, but if you joined us late, you're tuned in for our session. I've been diagnosed with kidney disease. What are my next steps? We'll have a Q&A at the end of our time today, but if you don't have time to wait to ask your question, you don't have to wait. You can put your comments in the window next to or below the Facebook Live video, or in the chat box to the right if you're on the Kidney Action website, Kidney Action Week website. We'll try to answer as many of your questions as possible. All right, now back to our questions with Della. All right, when you were first diagnosed with kidney disease, did you understand about the stages? You had mentioned that you were already at stage 4 when you were diagnosed. Did you have to do your own research to kind of learn about it, or did your health team were they able to help you understand this?
You know what? I was very fortunate to have the director of the renal department to be my primary doctor, my kidney doctor. And so he took me through a little basic understanding of, chronic kidney disease. He talked to me about my numbers, my GFR numbers. He talked to me also about the stages a little bit. And so I really appreciated that because, he and I had this connection and a relationship where he understood that I needed to know. And so when he told me about the stage 4 and that I was very close to stage 5, which was actually end stage, he was sharing that we was going to have to go through some treatments, and that's where I learned I had to do the chemotherapy. So speaking with him and talking to him, and he was very, when you go to a teaching hospital, a county hospital, that's what they do with their standard medical students. So me being an educator, I treated, I hound him until he could be able to share that. But that opened the door for relationship, that opened the door for a more effective communication. And so from there, that initial dialogue with him did provoke me to go out and try to learn a little bit more about the stages. And so that helped me to understand where I was. And so when I did get the call from my primary care physician that at that time, because I had switched over to a new person, when I had to go immediately to dialysis, I crashed into it, but at least I had an understanding that that was going to be my option eventually.
Mhm. Yeah, just for everybody listening in or tuning in, there are 5 stages of kidney disease. It goes from stage 1, which is the mildest form,
Yeah.
all the way to, as Della mentioned, stage 5, which is, as she said, end stage kidney disease, at the time when you typically would need to start on dialysis or to receive a transplant in order to replace your non-functioning kidneys. Um, the stages are basically determined by something called your EGFR. That's your estimated glomerular filtration rate. That basically is a measure of how well your kidney is functioning. When it's closer to 100, that means we think of it as being close to 100% of function. Uh, as you as that function goes down, the number for the EGFR goes down as well, to the point where the lower the number, that means the less your kidney is functioning. The best time to be referred to your nephrologist is usually sometime within stage 3. That's when your function is between 30 and 60%. Sometimes your primary care doctor may identify that you have kidney disease at an earlier stage and can help keep an eye to make sure that it stays stable, or to see how quickly it might be dropping to those lower numbers. As we heard from Della, she was diagnosed when she was at stage 4, which is when you start feeling more of the symptoms and having more of the problems associated with kidney disease. I was fortunate; I was diagnosed somewhere around 1 or 2. It wasn't until I got into later stages of kidney disease that I started to have more of those symptoms and started to need medications. All right, back to another question for you, Della.
Yeah.
What were the steps you took to become an expert in understanding the different numbers associated with kidney disease, like your creatinine and your EGFR? And do you have any tips for the audience on how you track these numbers at home?
Oh, definitely. Well, first thing first, I'm an educator. So, as a educator, one of the things is I'm a researcher. And so words to me are power. And I really believe in that. And so when a doctor was talking to me about creatinine, glomerular rate, filtration rate, and EGFR, I needed to know what exactly was that. So I did my research. So I went on, not only, I like to call it Google University, did my research with a lot of the medical websites. But then at the same time, I myself became engaged with some of the advocacy programs, like, National Kidney Foundation of Illinois, where I live at, American Kidney Fund, American Association of Kidney Patients, AKP. And it was important for me to make sure that I represented those individuals like me who crashed into it, but then have the ability to be able to know what are some of the steps and what are some of the things to know about the disease. And so I went into professor mode. I went to teaching and doing my own research. And so I myself at home will do a lot of research, write out. I did write several articles in relations to that, and did several webinars on my own to make sure that individuals like me, especially African American and low community areas, will understand, what exactly they're going through, the symptoms. So what I do now is I'm constantly making sure that I present any new changes or any new things. So I am connecting with my team, connecting with my peers, as well as my doctors. Making sure that anything changes for me, that I'm understanding exactly how those changes affect me as a person, so I could be able to create my best normal. But then I do share my journey, very open, very, very passionate as it relates to that. And so that hence is the reason for me creating my nonprofit called Live, and helping people to understand that just because you got a diagnosis or a disease, that doesn't mean that's your determination or your outcome. So it's very important for me to show and represent the fact that you can live with maybe an illness, but yet still you yourself have the ability to create your journey how you want to do that. And so I do a lot of things along that line, teach, and I became a kidney health coach for American Kidney Fund so that I can make sure that I'm out in the community really sharing this information. So I keep myself abreast and engaged along that line.
Yeah, that's really great. You're so amazing, and exactly as you said, knowledge is power, and the fact that you're able to use your experiences to share that knowledge with others as a kidney health coach. Um, Kind of related to that, when you were diagnosed before and now, as well as you're dealing with the issues with your kidney now,
Yeah.
are there things that you've talked about with your doctor in terms of developing an initial care plan, or things to help maintain your kidney health, or things that you talk to people as a health coach to be able to keep an eye on their kidney health and to help preserve their kidney health?
I must say, now having the understanding of chronic kidney disease, and at the same time, understanding going through this phases, because it's a lot of emphasis on transplantation. But I love when you shared in your initial bio and when you was talking that transplant is not the cure. It is definitely a treatment. And so going through the phases of journey of transplantation, I too is dealing with rejection because of the numerous urinary tract infections, and COVID did not help. One of the
Mm,
things that I can say now is, unlike before where I did not understand what was happening, having the knowledge and having the understanding of chronic kidney disease is helping me to develop a better care plan, to develop what would be the process that I would take if and when, because eventually it's going to happen. When the kidney is not functioning anymore, where do I want to go? Am I going to, be proactive versus reactive? So what I've done now is determine that if and when my situation becomes back to the end stage, because I am at stage 4, because my numbers, EGFR numbers, is at 18. If when I get there, I at least know that, am I going to go back into the in center? Am I going to do it at home? So I already understand for my process, communication with my doctor, that I am going to do and go back to doing home dialysis. The second
mm,
phase will be is what can I do to make sure now, because remember, lupus is still the, what you might say, the bear here that caused all this. What can I do to get my numbers back stable so that I can be a candidate for a possible second transplant and do what's necessary? Where before I might have been scared, I might have been like really mentally not in the right mindset, but because I'm understanding now, being proactive and working with my team now is going to help me to position myself to be possibly a candidate for a second transplant, and hopefully sooner than 10 years like it took me the first one, but then at the same time to work even better to help my body to function. That entails nutrition, that entails exercise, that
mhm.
entails all of the things that I need to do. So I'm much more prepared. I'm much more in tune with my functions and with my body than I have been when I first started this journey. And that's empowerment. And that's what I do. I use my words now to empower, but then at the same time, I use my journey to help someone else who may be going through what I'm going through following after transplant, not to look at it as a negative, but to look at now, what can you do to still thrive, to still live, to still, be empowered, even though you might be going through a negative situation.
Yes, exactly. You've hit so many of the high points of what it takes to be an empowered and engaged patient. Being
Mhm.
aware of the different treatment options, like you said, the different kinds of dialysis that are options for you versus finding a transplant. The importance of taking your medications, whether it be for to treat the underlying condition, lupus in your case, or the side effects that come along with having kidney disease,
Yes.
all of the important life choices, like you mentioned, living an active lifestyle, getting exercise, eating healthy. There's actually been data that eating more of a plant-based diet is beneficial for kidney health as
Mhm.
well. Um,
Yes.
and then, like you mentioned, like we've talked about before, there are many things that could potentially lead to kidney disease. In your case, the lupus. In my case, the FSGS. But for many people, it could be related to high blood pressure or diabetes. So making sure that
Yes.
you're working with your doctors to make sure the treatment for those are under control, and treatment is as good as it possibly can be. And again, all that includes a healthy diet, healthy lifestyle,
Mhm.
getting exercise, and being in close contact with your doctors.
Yeah.
Great. And yeah, you already touched on how the treatments can change throughout the time. Um, Throughout any time of your diagnosis,
Yes.
of course, communication with your doctor has been key. In your opinion, why is it important to keep your doctor and or care team updated on your symptoms or any questions that you might have? How can those who are newly diagnosed initiate those conversations with their healthcare providers?
Well, early detection is everything. Because you know your body. You know when something is not right. You feel the symptoms, and like all of the key core, the fatigue, the swelling, the inflammation, and some cases itching, hair loss, and some swelling of your hands, swelling of your eyes. These are things that you don't ignore. These are things that you need to share. So it is important for you not to be reactive. You got to be proactive. Early detection is everything. A lot of times, symptoms can be treated very, very, very quickly if you speak on it. It's easy for you to try to do self diagnosis because you're thinking, oh, this is nothing, this is go away, or this is not, maybe this is just simple. But no, simple in our case, especially when you are have an immune compromised system, is major. Nothing is simple when you're dealing with a chronic illness, regardless if it's kidney disease, cancer, anything. Everything matters. And so, one of the things that I really encourage and I really promote is communication, being proactive, understanding your body, listening to it, tune in. Don't allow yourself to say, oh, I'll deal with it tomorrow. Look, you might not like going into the emergency room, but that emergency room can be the 3 seconds or the 15 minutes that can save your life. And so, even as a new patient, you might not understand what's going on. That is the reason why you need to speak up. One of the things that I always promote and I always share, don't just be silent. You are your best advocate. For my case, I know we lean a lot on the doctors, but however it may be, you know what's going on. You feel it. You understand it. So you got to be proactive. Speak up. Don't allow yourself to sit there and think that, oh, it's just like, no, nothing is like. That's number one. But number two, don't be afraid. I know fear can easily creep in because, so many things and so many situations is happening. But you cannot be afraid. Just know there's many more people who have gone through what you're going through, and we are out here thriving and not just surviving. And so many of us who are patients, one of the things we do is like for a patient, by a patient. We advocate, we write, we share. Why? Because we want our peers to know you can make it. And I wish that if I would have started at the beginning, had someone like me to come in and share these words that I'm sharing now with me, maybe I would have started this journey much better. But because,
Hmm.
I am who I am, I'm a teacher by trade, I'm an educator, and I believe in giving people the tools in their toolbox to help them have a equal fight. So what am I telling you? It's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. And just know you're going to make it. Get the knowledge, talk to your physicians, talk to your nurse. Anything new, speak up. Don't be silent. Let them know. That's the way how you're going to survive.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. There's so many symptoms associated with kidney disease that can seem very minor, until they're not, until they have lots of huge effects on your life. So having an open and continuous dialogue with your doctors is very, very important. And it's good to have that relationship beforehand, before you have difficulties, so that when these new things come up, you feel comfortable talking with them about these new problems that are coming in. Because as Della mentioned, there are things that your doctor can do. There are different treatments to make you feel better. You don't have to feel like that all the time. You talked a lot about how you sought support in becoming a part of the community. When you're diagnosed with kidney disease, it comes with obviously a lot of changes. Were you able to also seek support from your friends and family? Was it difficult for them to understand? In addition to the things that you mentioned, are there other online resources that you felt helpful?
Yeah, you know what? Your family is everything. I always say the home is the place of healing. And this is where it starts. It always starts at home. And so I have two adult daughters now. And of course, I got grandchildren as well. And I'm excited about the fact that able to enjoy and still be here to see them grow. But it was important for me to sit down and it's important for me to include my daughters in my journey. Why? Because when I'm unable to communicate or able to talk on my behalf, you got to have somebody to be able to speak to you. So, speak for you, I meant to say. And so, engaging my daughters into my care, making sure that they had a communication and that my doctors knew who was my advocate that could speak on my behalf when I'm not able to do so is really important. And then not only it's important to have your intimate, your home team, but it's also important to have that external team. And what I mean, best friends, church family. I'm a strong faith-based person, and my church is my foundation. My faith is what helps keep me going, moving forward. So I have even my church family that understands and know my journey, and to get those words of encouragement to be able to bring like kidney screenings, because that's one of the things that I do, and I do it at my church every quarterly. As a matter of fact, on April 1st we're having another kidney screening. So engaging that within that community, my church community, helps me feel that I'm giving back, because there's many other individuals like me who just don't know. And so connecting with, organizations like I mentioned earlier, the National Kidney Fund, the American Kidney Fund, the National Kidney Foundation, working with even Dialysis Patient Citizen Group, a lot of places like that to advocate and to represent within the kidney community is really, really important, because not only it helps you to understand, it helps you to connect with people's not only externally, but it also helps your family and those intimate peoples that's in your life to really understand the process of what you're going through. And that's really important. So, that you're not on this journey alone. So that's just all part of me. That's my way of creating my new normal. And my normal is advocating, my normal is doing what I do, and expanding and reaching out to not only just individuals in the African American community, but all over. Because remember, when you're dealing with a chronic illness, it has no face, color, or culture. It is. It's just that serious.
Yeah, that support system is so important, like you mentioned, whether it be like through your family, your friends, your community, your spirituality, and I'm exactly the same way. I feel that the sense that I'm giving back and helping to educate other people has really helped me to maintain a positive outlook about my health and my future. But that said, it's obviously not all sunshine and roses,
Yeah.
with all the ups and downs that we have. And kidney disease at any stage can take a toll on your mental health. Do you have any advice for maintaining mental health after receiving your diagnosis?
Definitely. I know for me, it was like I told you, it started there. And I did. I I'm an advocate of support and therapy. I did have to go through a phase of therapy, even though I talked to my social worker in the dialysis facility. I talked to my social worker even at the home dialysis clinic. But I did find it was necessary for me to talk to someone that's outside of the dialysis arena. So if it's necessary, then I'm going to say do that. But then at the same time, you need to have that connection where even with my own primary care physician and also with my nephrologist, when I had those mindset the issues, I talked to them about it. And just to make sure that I was just not sitting at home, just keeping this in internally. It's so important for you to really reach out. It's so important for you not to hold this in. It's important for you to reach out. It's important for you to share. And even if that means going into a support group with other individuals who can connect with you, who understands your journey, it's also power. It's empowering, because it's something about when you can talk about your symptoms, you can talk about the things that you went through and have somebody else who actually went through the same thing. So I encourage getting into a support group. I encourage, talking to some of these other advocacy groups, talking to other advocates, talking to maybe a peer rep if you in center, or even just reaching out to your doctors, or if like me, in my particular case, I had to get therapy. And that was one of the best investments that I had to do because now, you know, after going through that therapy, it helped me to understand. A lot of people could look at me and they're like, I can't believe you're going through all this. And one of the things that I had to learn is that I am a patient. I'm probably a high functioning patient, but I'm a patient. And sometimes, even in advocacy, you can give so much of you, but once in a while, you need to take that moment to take care of you. And when you go through, like you said, the ups and downs of that, it can take not only mental toll. So, going through, talking, sharing, and really connecting, if you have to do outside, go outside, but don't keep it to yourself. Reach out. There are groups, there's support groups, there's individuals like me. And if you have to, go to therapy. It's necessary.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for being so open and honest about your journey. I am a huge proponent of therapy. I love my therapist. I think everybody should be in therapy, uh, but especially people with kidney disease on dialysis with transplants. There's just so many ups and downs that kind of come with this journey. Um, and exactly like you mentioned, Della, it doesn't necessarily have to be a long-term thing. It can be a short-term thing, but
Yeah.
I think that there are many things that we can learn from having that interaction with a professional, with a mental health professional who is equipped with those tools. Um, you did also mention about support groups. I think I also agree. I sought those out as well, but we also have to recognize that the causes of kidney failure can vary from person to person, and
Yes.
that while support groups are very helpful, we have to also take everything with a grain of salt and avoid comparing
Yes.
ourselves and our journey with other people's. We can learn obviously from the things that other people have gone through, but ultimately we having that discussion with our doctors is important. It looks like we're getting to the time to get to questions from the audience.
Oh, wonderful.
Let's see. There's a question. There's an image on slide 4 that features different symptoms of kidney disease. What symptoms are specific to early stages versus end stage questions or end stage renal failure? So blood or protein can sometimes appear earlier in. Those can be evidence of damage that's happened to the kidney, whether it be from some sort of injury that's happened, like Dellas lupus, or some other kind of underlying disease like mine. Later on, you start to see more of those problems related to the inability to remove the extra fluid or the extra toxins or to balance the
Yes.
electrolytes or salts in the blood. That can lead to the swelling and the problems with high blood pressure.
Hmm.
And then also in those later stages, we see the problems with the ability of your body to make red blood cells, which will make you, when you don't make red blood cells, you can't carry oxygen to your tissues, and that's what makes you feel tired and feeling like you have less energy. Also, the problems with bone health can happen at that time. But sometimes you don't even really feel those symptoms. It's not until you start having more fractures than normal that it becomes evident, unless you're seeing your nephrologist regularly. There's a question from the chat as well. What can one do to increase your EGFR without medications? I can answer this, but Della, do you have any thoughts that you've learned from your coaching?
One of the things, definitely from the traditional nutrition, that's definitely something that was important. Changing of the diet, doing the exercises, a lot of things like that. The food base that did help to increase the number to help revert it back. So that was really, really important. That was key for me.
Yes, definitely. Diet and exercise are probably the most important non-medication interventions to make sure that you're maintaining your kidney health, maintaining your EGFR, or sometimes even helping it to improve. As I mentioned earlier, there is a little bit of there is some evidence that suggests that plant-based diet or eating more vegetarian type things instead of meat can be beneficial for kidney health and maintaining.
Yes.
As well as sometimes, but again, speaking with a nutritionist who's able to help you guide you through this. As we mentioned before, it can be different depending on what your underlying kidney disease is, and what stage of kidney disease you're at. What of these interventions might be best for you? So I definitely recommend talking with a nutritionist through your nephrologist. For some people, it can mean eating less protein. For others, it can mean eating more protein. So again, talking to your nutritionist and doing this in consultation with your nephrologist. Let's see. We have a couple of questions. Yeah, all similarly about diet and exercise, as we mentioned. And oh, this is a good one. What should patients keep in mind when searching for a nephrologist? When should patients seek a second opinion?
Well, that's when I found out. Like I said, I was at the county hospital, but I did second. I was at one hospital because once I really found out about I had kidney disease, I started the journey of even looking for transplant. And so it happened to be I was at a major hospital, and from that major hospital, I got a call from my primary care physician, who was an internal medicine doctor, and she was the one that told me I had to start doing dialysis. And of course, at that particular time, I didn't have a direct nephrologist under my new plan. So she recommended me to the nephrologist that I have right now. However, having the experience of communication with my my nephrologist when I was at the county hospital, and the way how we communicated before I said yes or even accepted this new doctor, my current nephrologist, I asked him if he would be willing enough to speak to the other doctor, and he was willing to do so. And so from their communication and my community relationship with them, with him, he was basically, agreeing with the diagnosis that the new doctor has said. Now, I'm going to say this: it's your body. It's you. You are the patient. And at any point in time, if you feel you're not receiving the information that you're seeking pertaining to your healthcare, you can choose to get a second opinion to a nephrologist or any other doctor at any point in time in your care. It is important for you to feel comfortable and for you to feel that the individual that's providing you that care is communicating with you, is open, you have a dialogue, and is establishing that relationship, because that's going to be most important. You're able to communicate, they sharing, and together you guys are working a partnership pertaining to your care. So at any point in time you feel you're not getting that, I would say go look for another doctor.
Yeah, definitely. I've been fortunate that I've had really great relationships with my nephrologists.
Hmm.
I just luck of the draw had really outstanding people
Yeah.
that I've worked with, but I've also moved around a lot, so I've had to form new relationships with nephrologists at many different times, and it's always a little bit scary when you're seeing any kind of new
Totally.
doctor to form that relationship, to make sure that you feel comfortable with them, because
Yeah.
as you mentioned before, you have to have this very clear and open dialogue, to share about the different symptoms that you're having, to feel comfortable asking questions. When I see patients as well, we see patients that come to us for a second opinion. Uh, Sometimes it can be because one specific center or a specific doctor may have expertise in a certain kind of kidney disease that you have. Or maybe it just might be an interpersonal thing as well. We encourage our patients, if they want to also to seek out opinions from other people as well. There are all kinds of new treatments that are coming out, and although there are guidelines for treating many of the things in kidney disease, there are some things that are still a little bit of a gray area, and so again, getting that other opinion can be important. As Della mentioned, it's your body; you're the one that's in charge. This often comes up a lot more even when people are looking for transplant centers. Different transplant centers may have different comfort levels with transplant in patients with different underlying conditions or particular experience if you have a specific situation. Uh, you can find the data on the outcomes of transplant centers and how many transplants they've done, how successful their transplants have been. And so I encourage people to look into finding out that information, talking to your transplant center. They should be very transparent about sharing that information with you, and potentially investigating other centers as well, if that's an option to you. Let's see. We have another question. What can I do to keep my creatinine down and preserve function? Um, for me personally, as I mentioned, when I was younger, I was on a medication called an ACE inhibitor, which is a kind of blood pressure medication that helped to slow the progression of my kidney disease. It's been found that this medication, in addition to bringing down blood pressure, also helps to reduce the amount of protein that's in the urine. As we mentioned before, protein in the urine can be a sign that there's damage to the kidney. But if there's too much protein in the urine, the protein itself also causes damage. And so these medications that help to reduce that protein can help to prolong the life of the kidney. And I think because I was on that medication, I was able to go for over 10 years uh, with my kidney function slowly declining, as opposed to it might have more quickly declined if I hadn't been on that medication. More recently, there have been really exciting developments in the field of nephrology with a new medication that was first used for diabetes, called SGLT2 inhibitors. They're a family called, we call them as a group Flozins, that have been shown to have a benefit even in patients that don't have diabetes. It also has potential benefits for your heart health as well. And so more and more patients are being put on those medications uh, when they're diagnosed early on in the progression of their chronic kidney disease. And as we mentioned before, other modifications to your diet in consultation with your nutritionist, leading an active lifestyle, can also that will be able to help control your blood pressure and your um, diabetes if you have them, can also help to slow the progression of your kidney disease. Let's see. We probably have time for one more question. Let's see. Uh, let's see. How can dehydration impact your kidney function? Della, do you have any? Have you been told anything by your doctors about this?
Yeah. Because, remember, the whole thing about the kidney is to extract the fluid. And so, one of the things by taking the medicines, even prior to transplantation, I was dehydrated all the time. And so, the amount of intake fluid that I had versus the outtake that was coming out, or because at that time I wasn't even producing urine, was really a problem. And so I would have to do like crushed ice, constantly doing something that would prohibit, to try to produce moisture, that type of situation. It was crazy, but it was a certain amount of fluid intake, frozen things, frozen grapes, all types of things to try to help, me not to be as dehydrated as I was, but that was an issue for me. And so we had to go through various types of things to help in relations to for my particular case. Like we said all the time, each person is really different. And because I wasn't producing urine, for me to drink so much fluid was not helping me. So we have to be very creative to try to help me with my dehydration.
Yeah, definitely. It changed exactly like you said. Each person is different, so this is definitely a discussion to have with your nephrologist and your nutritionist. It can change from person to person, and it can change depending on what stage of kidney disease you're at. Particularly at the earlier stages, stage 1 and 2, being dehydrated can damage the kidney when you have, particularly when you have severe dehydration, because that impacts the blood flow to your kidneys if you don't have enough fluid. That can cause your blood pressure to go down, and when there's not enough blood pressure and blood flow and fluid going to the kidneys, that also makes the kidneys injured too. Particularly, we talk about this a lot in transplant patients, that they need to drink at least like a minimum amount of fluid. I have my water with me here to make sure that I'm drinking plenty of fluid during the day. But exactly like Della mentioned, at later stages of kidney disease, before you need dialysis or when you're on dialysis, too much fluid it ends up being the problem instead, where your body's not able to get rid of that water, and you end up having issues with swelling and high blood pressure, like we mentioned before. All right, let's see. So we're approaching the end of our time, so we'll start wrapping things up a little bit. Thank you so much, Della, for sharing your story with us, and thank you to the audience for the great questions, and for this fantastic Q&A. As we close, we want to leave you with a few takeaways. So I'll check in with you, Della, to see if you have any final thoughts. What are 2 takeaways or 2 things that things to know or do that you would like the audience to have about receiving kidney diagnosis?
Well, first thing first, I want them to feel empowered by this. Understand your diagnosis is not your outcome. So, what am I saying? You are the architect of your life. Create your new normal. Once you find out that you have chronic kidney disease, or even if you're at stage 3, begin to be more proactive than reactive. Start implementing those plans, those processes. Create the plan that's going to help you to be able to stay as long as you can. And I do know several people who are not in dialysis, not doing that, who's at stage 3 and they're living the best normal life. Why? Because they talk to the doctor, taking the medicine, they're being proactive with their team. The second thing is learn about your health, and do your own research, advocate for that, find out exactly what you need to be able to keep yourself away from, the dialysis centers or whatever you need to do. I'm just saying education is everything. Early detection is everything. Don't take a little something and make it big. Speak up, talk to your nephrologist, create that atmosphere, engage with your family, make sure they are aware, and create that normal that you can. Because I'm telling you, even though you might have a chronic illness, that does not mean that your life is over, or doesn't mean that you got to be dealing with this in a negative way. I always say, your words are empowered to empower you. So speak up, be proactive, and just know it's going to be okay.
Thank you so much, Della, for your time and expertise. Your story is going to be able to inspire those who are newly diagnosed. For me, I have a very similar takeaway: being proactive, exactly, establishing, making sure you have that good relationship with your doctors, your primary care doctor, your nephrologist, early on, so that when things start going bad, they're there to be able to respond more quickly to the things that are happening. And to reiterate the point that we had earlier, making sure that you have a support network, whether it be your family, your faith, a therapist, etc. I think all of those are super important in being able to survive the journey of having kidney disease. With all that said, it's time to end this session. Thank you to our audience for tuning in to the first session of Kidney Action Week. We have a great week planned for you. Stay online and watch a healthy snacking mini session starting at 3:35 p.m. Eastern Time, or tune in for a live session at 4 p.m. Eastern to learn more about advancements in treating diabetic kidney disease. With that, thank you again for all of your time.